This is my temperature blanket where I've crocheted one row for every day based on the high temperature of that day. This is January all the way through September. I may or may not have just got done with September last night, so that should be a good indicator. I'm a little bit over a month behind on this project at the moment. I'm hoping to change that all this week though and get this blanket fully caught up on all 35 plus weeks of it, because I currently do not feel confident going into the holiday season being this far behind. I would really like to have this project done by the first week of January, and that's kind of always been my goal. And I have, again, I have 35 plus rows I need to catch up on. So I am going to be disciplined this week and catch up on all the rows I need to catch up on. That way, going into the holiday season, I can do 1 or 2 rows a day and feel really confident doing all that. I got really behind over the summer with just the craziness of the garden and preserving a bunch of food. So yeah, I finally caught up on September, but there's a lot more to go. Before I jump in and start catching up on this blanket though, I wanted to kind of go over some of the questions I receive all the time on this project. I receive questions on like what type of yarn I'm using, what type of stitch I'm using, how big this blanket will be toward the end. So let's kind of just dive into that real fast. So when it comes to yarn, I am using all Heartland's Lion brand series. I really liked just the tone overall of all the colors in the series. I really wanted to have a traditional temperature chart color range of hot and cold. And when I found this series, I really liked how the colors were true, but yet a little bit more neutral and muted than a traditional like rainbow. So you can see here, this is my color chart. I have everything from hot to cold, and most of it is a 10-degree temperature range minus my last color, which is everything 19 degrees and below. This is the only color out of the whole year we haven't used yet, and there's a chance we might end up using it. We'll see. I'm hoping I'll be able to use every color. This is just my month divider. I have a month divider just kind of show me really easily every single month. So once I get done with a month, I crochet this ivory color in between each month, and everything else is just a 10-degree temperature difference. So that kind of gives you a little indicator on all the colors there, and they're all Heartland Lion brand series. And I'm using a 6mm hook because that's a question I get too. I'm not following any type of pattern. I just decided on what type of yarn I liked, got the crochet hook that I needed, and kind of winged it. Since I'm not using a pattern, you may be wondering, well, how big will it be? I just wanted to figure out a nice length that I wanted it to be like width-wise, and then I just went with it. This is actually going to be about 7.5 feet by 5.5 feet, which is a good size blanket that you can just share with someone that I really like. And I'm just doing a single crochet stitch, and it's 230 stitches for the width. So every row is 230 stitches, which is honestly quite big, and it does take me about 20 minutes per row roughly. But yeah, it's just a single basic crochet stitch. How do I keep track when I'm so behind? Great question. I have a chart here that allows me to insert the temperature of that day, what yarn correlates with that temperature, and if I am done with it or not. There are some times I will forget to take a snapshot of the high of the day, but you can typically do a Google search of your weather for about a month's time, plus you can find stuff up to years past on what the weather was like and the high that day. So if you ever run into that problem, you can just simply do a search online on what the weather was or what the temperature was that day. But I do like keeping a chart on what it was, what the color of the yarn was, and if I'm done or not, because this could easily become a cluster if I didn't mark off every row once I'm done. Because once I'm done with a row, I type yes onto my little chart here, just so I know for sure that row was completely done. So that answers majority of the questions I get often. If you have any questions that I can potentially answer, put them below and I'll try to get to as many as I possibly can. But before I really like get into my groove with crocheting, I'm gonna kind of show you guys how to do a row. I weave in all the ends as I go. It's kind of a cluster at the moment. You can see my work does not look as neat. I have not cleaned up probably anything for the last 3 months at this point. But yeah, I'm gonna walk you through a row. It's really easy to kind of see when you go along the white. Warning though, I am not someone that makes tutorials, nor am I someone that's crocheted for long. It's literally been a little over a year since I crocheted. So take this with a grain of salt. Just know that I've done this for the whole project and it seems to be working quite well. All right, let's look at the chart. For October 1st, we had a high of 91, which is the color Redwoods. So I have Redwoods right here, and this was our final stitch of our last row. When you're going into the last stitch, you don't fully do your last stitch when you're going to change your color. So I will kind of backtrack a few stitches and then kind of show you guys how I got to this point, and then we will add in our new color of red and keep going. All right, so to do a single crochet stitch, all you're going to do is insert your hook, grab the yarn and pull it through to where you have these 2 notches. Then you yarn over the hook and you pull through. That is all you do. Once you can master this simple pulling the yarn through and then pulling it, it's very easy. So you just insert your hook, grab the yarn, pull it through where you have these 2, yarn over the hook, and pull that yarn through those 2 loops. So for this last stitch here, we're going to insert the hook, grab the yarn, and then right here before we finish off the last stitch, once we have the 2 loops onto the hook here, I'm going to grab my other yarn, and all I'm going to do is kind of fold the yarn in half where I'm just folding it in half a little bit, like 4 to 6 inches. I'm going to insert it onto that hook, and while I'm kind of holding the white yarn, I'm going to pull this through those 2 loops to where the red is now currently the only thing on the hook. And I go ahead and just not even fully knot it. I just do one little like pull to kind of keep something there. And then at the end of the row, you do 1, chain 1, and then we will flip our project. And that is when we're going to work our way into the next row and kind of weave these in at the same time. Now, what I like to do is I hold my red yarn in my left hand, and then these 2 strings I'm not going to worry about initially. I'm going to go through, insert my hook into that first stitch here. So I'm going to insert it, but instead of grabbing this yarn and pulling it through right away, I'm going to kind of lift these 2 strings up and lay them across the top where they're on top of that stitch here. And now I'm going to grab the yarn, pull it through, and then I'm going to yarn over, pull it through, and now I have my first stitch. And now these ends are kind of already tucked into the project. So now I'm just going to insert it into the stitch, and now these will kind of just lay there and you just continue to stitch like normal. So I'm just inserting my hook, grabbing the yarn, there's my 2 loops, yarn over, pull through. So I'm just going to keep on with the row. With this Redwoods color, I do change it immediately. Once I get done with this row, we jump down to the 80s, so I will use the color called Yosemite. One reason why I love this project is my husband loves football, and we watch a lot of football in this house, and I love being able to just kind of chill and hang out while we watch football, yet I can work on a project, and it's not like something I have to like do in the kitchen. It's not something like I have to get messy. It's just pick up my blanket and do it. That's one reason I love crochet. Like, I was really trying to find a hobby that would complement my life, especially with gardening during busy times and slow times, and not feel like I always had to do it, or I could pick it up for an hour here or there, whatnot. And it wasn't something like I would have to clean up, because I spend a lot of time of my life cleaning up. I clean up after chickens, I clean in my garden, I clean my kitchen daily. So I really didn't want a project where I felt like I had to clean something else up. I really dabbled in pottery for a while, and I love pottery, but honestly, during this time in my life, I really just felt like the hobby was a little bit too much for me, because there was just so much cleanup involved with it, and I really just didn't enjoy all the cleanup, because I really wanted to have a more simple hobby. We will see how much I get done today. I would like to get a minimum of 4 to 5 rows done this afternoon. I might pick this up a little bit later, but I really need to be averaging, I think, like 8 to 10 rows a day if I want to get this done within like the next 3 to 4 days, which is the goal. So yesterday afternoon, I got 5 rows done, and then last night, I got another 5 rows done. So I did not film last night's 5 rows, but I'm really kind of sad I didn't, because we finally got to add in Bryce Canyon again, which is kind of like this goldy tone here. And I didn't really even realize it's been so long since I've used that color. And I looked it up, and it's been 140 days between when I used this color last. And then I was curious because here in the next handful of days approaching on this timeline, we are also approaching the 50s, the 40s, and the 30s. So we knock off a lot of new, we add in colors we haven't used in a very long time. So yeah, I'm really excited to be going back into the cooler tones and kind of balance out the blanket a little bit. So that's really cool. I actually get to use different blues, but I did have a few days with this Yosemite. And since I showed you guys how to change colors with each row, I wanted to show you how easy it was to not change colors, because my next row is actually another row of Yosemite. So this is going to be really easy. Let me show you. Once I get caught up, I'm also going to clean up all of this with you guys as well, but I'm going to backtrack a few. Let's see here, put my hook in. We're going to insert it, grab the yarn, pull it through. You'll have your 2 loops, yarn over, pull through, insert your hook. This is our last stitch. You're going to grab the yarn, pull it through. You're going to then yarn over like you would, and then that completes the stitch. To complete the row, the only thing I do is I chain 1, and then what I will do now is completely flip the project, and now we are on a new row. Bam. And since we didn't change colors and all of that, we have nothing to have to weave in. So you just go to your first stitch and continue on. I don't know if I'm going to do another one of these next year or not. I've been debating. Initially, I wanted to do one every year because I really love how this project just correlates with my garden, and I can always look back and see what the temperatures were around certain times of the year, especially with gardening. But this has been a really big project, and I honestly want to try to play around with other crochet projects, but I really want to do another one of these because I think it'd be really, really, really cool to compare the years. And I'm sure I'm also going to have yarn left over, because the one thing with the temperature blanket is it's very unpredictable about what colors you're going to use as far as yarn goes. So when I started, I got 2 of each color, and minus like my extremes, like my extreme ones, I only got 1 of each color, but I still haven't used the 1 color, and it's looking like a few of the other colors, I don't even know if I'm going to use a full skein or not. And then there's other colors where I've already gone through 3 to 4 skeins of yarn, and it is a little bit unpredictable. So I definitely am going to still have yarn to where it would make going into the following year really, really easy. So I don't know. All right, I'm gonna end here as of the moment. I wanna make some dinner. I'm getting hungry, but there is our first green in a very long time. And I think it's crazy that we literally have a day that was pretty hot 90s, and then here's already a 50, and we're going all the way to the 30s. This is gonna be a crazy month. I didn't get all 10 rows done yesterday. I did get 8 of them done though, and my very last row, I was really curious if I was going to even have enough yarn, and I had the perfect amount of yarn to get my row of like that salmon color done. But the next 8 days are really boring. So I have 5 days in the 80s, pretty much high 80s at this point too, like 89, 87, almost another 90-degree day. And then I have 3 more days of like that salmon-y color. So I have 8 days right here of just these 2 colors, and it's 5 days straight of this and then 3 days of this. So this is going to be a little boring. After this though, we are jumping all over the place for the rest of October, and that should actually be pretty cool. So far for the month of October, I really wasn't having much jumping around at all for the last few months. You can see I just have a lot of stretches of 80s, 90s, and then this like purpley color here, this dark color, that's everything over 100. And you can see it's just a lot of those like three-ish colors really. And then you get to October and we've just been up, down, here, there. And I really haven't seen like a month like that since probably about May. I think this right here was May, January, February, March, April. No, April. April was a lot like how October is currently going. So that is really cool to see. I think it's really interesting that we will have a day that was in the 90s, which our day in the 90s was 91, and our coldest day for a high in October was 36. That is quite the swing. I tell you guys all the time, Kansas has some pretty crazy fluctuating weather. I think that just kind of proves it, how our week can literally just jump all over the place. But I know that's how it is for quite a few people. So all I'm going to do is this boringness. I'll probably just catch up with you guys after I do this chunk. This is probably going to take me like 2 to 3 hours. And I'm gonna just try to get all 8 of these rows done. I might do a 9th row today. We will see how far I get. Either way, I'm just going to bust out a lot of crocheting when it comes to the next 8 days and how boring of a stretch this will be. Okay, so I just did this chunk right here. I ended up doing 9 rows. I went ahead and did my day that was in the 60s, but here is my 5 rows in the 80s, my 3 in the 70s, and my 1 in the 60s. So now that I have all of that done, I am jumping all the way to 40 degrees and 36 degrees, and then the last 2 days in October are also in the 40s. So my next 2 colors are my 30s and my 40s, and I have not needed either of these colors in about 220 days. So they are in here. This is my 20s, so I don't need that. This is my 40s color called Petrified Forest. And then my 30s is this, my 30s is this Carlsbad Canyon. Having a little chart helps a lot. Even though I've done 9 rows today, I have 4 more plus my month divider before I get to anything November. And I also need to put a few more days on here. But my goal for tonight, even though I've already done 9, I want to try to accomplish these next 4 plus my month divider. So I have 5 more rows to go. Maybe I'll be overly ambitious and try to bust out some of November because it is only 4 o'clock. Dinner's going to be easy tonight. So there's really not much I have to do. I could really bust out a lot of crochet tonight, but 9 rows is already quite a bit. I've already been crocheting for about 3 hours today. All right, so I got done with a little bit over November last night. I got through October and then I got the first 3 or 4 rows of November done, which look how cool this looks. Now that we added some blue and green back in, it's really starting to flow just a little bit more. But I have 6 more days to go to catch up on it, but we are making some good progress right now. Okay, so here is what we are looking at for the next 6 rows. I have a day in the 60s, 3 in the 70s, another day in the 60s, and then we jump to 57. All right, there you have it. I'm officially caught up. I did 39 rows and each row takes me roughly 20 to 22 minutes. So I have been crocheting for about 14 hours over the last 4 days. I got all the way from here to here added to the blanket. And I really like how it's really pulling everything together. It looks so, so cool. But I have all of these threads down here that I'm going to kind of clean up. So I have a few areas in the middle as well where I can join like skeins of yarn. There's a few different areas I need to kind of go through and clean up, but overall I'm just gonna kind of do this. But I just take my scissors, cut it low, not too low where I can't go through and light the ends real fast so they don't fray any longer. And then I just pull at the fabric and hide them in. It's really, really easy. Let me get you guys closer so you can see. Before like really cutting it, you see how this one's kind of bubbled? Right here, you can kind of see the stitch through the stitch. I always like to kind of make sure I tug on these a little bit more. It will kind of mess with the end, so pull them back a little bit, but that just exposes that much more that would eventually kind of poke through on the blanket. So cut it. Use the lighter. And then kind of just pull it through that stitch and voila. Here are all of my different colored scraps. All right, well here was October, which October was a really, really fun month. I haven't had that fun of a month since about March and April, but the blanket's really coming together and I really, really like it. I'm really excited about how it's turning out. Considering this is already November, I definitely know I'm not gonna have as much green and blue as I did at the top, but I think it just really balances. Even though it's so random, I think it's really fun and it all kind of just comes together. All right, guys, well, we are on our final, 7 weeks of the blanket. We don't have too much to go, but I really hope you guys enjoy just hanging out with me as I catch up on the blanket, giving you guys some more details. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye.